2024 is shaping up to be a huge year for the Sonic franchise. We are getting a third installment in the Sonic movie series and a new game, Shadow Generations, which is a spin-off game focused on Shadow. However, on top of that new Shadow game, we are also getting a re-release of Sonic Generations, which is still considered to be one of the best Sonic games of all time. But why is that? What exactly makes Generations stand out from other Sonic games that came out at the time? Well, I thought that with the release of Sonic X Shadow Generations right around the corner, it would be the perfect time to look back on the OG game and see if it still holds up as one of the best Sonic games. So how exactly did Sonic Generations come to be? 2011, it was a very interesting year for the franchise. The 20th anniversary of Sonic was a heavily anticipated thing, especially after the 15th anniversary celebration gave us, this. I know it's really cliche to talk about Sonic 06 nowadays because, oh yeah, it almost killed the franchise, and oh yeah, it ruined Sonic's reputation, and yada yada. But in the case of Generations, I think it's important to at least mention 06, because that got Sonic in a spot that no one thought he would be able to get out of. That was until the 2010s came along and we got the release of Sonic Colors. Finally, we had a game that, while simple in many aspects, was heavily focused on just being a Sonic game with simple gameplay and nothing more. But there was definitely more to be desired from that. That brings us to the release of Sonic Generations, a game created to celebrate Sonic's past for the 20th anniversary. Not only did this game scratch that itch that many people had after Colors, as Generations aimed to improve upon the gameplay seen in that game, but it also brought back the classic Sonic formula which many people have been requesting to return. The premise of Generations is quite simple. We have time travel. So one day Sonic is chilling with his friends celebrating his birthday when this big scary creature called the Time Eater crashes the party and traps everyone between time and space. So now it's up to Sonic to run through levels from previous games to save his friends and defeat the Time Eater. But he can't do that alone, of course, and he happens to find, well, a younger version of himself. So they both team up to stop the Time Eater. Oh, and what do you know, it was Eggman and classic Eggman all along who were the cause of all of this. But after the Sonics beat the Eggmans, they go back to their timelines and everything is cool. The story is very simple compared to previous Sonic games, but for what it's trying to be, it gets the job done. Sure, the writing is not out of this world and there aren't any emotional moments like there were in Unleashed, but overall, the story does offer a welcome contribution to the game as a whole. The two Sonics thing is definitely fun to watch, and it's entertaining seeing how Sonic's friends interact differently with each of them. But yes, we should talk about the fact that there are two Sonics in this game, which was a huge selling point of Generations. We have classic Sonic and modern Sonic, which both have differing gameplay styles. And when I say differing, I mean very different. Multiple gameplay styles in Sonic games are nothing new. The adventure games, Heroes, 06, and even Unleashed had two distinct gameplay styles, with the day and night stages. Sonic Generations splits up each zone into two acts. Act 1 has you playing as classic Sonic, which is the 2D side-scroller stuff, while Act 2 has you playing as modern Sonic, which is the more modern 3D Sonic boost stuff. Both styles are very evenly divided in Generations, which is something Unleashed in particular missed the mark on, because the Werehog took up most of the game. So I'm really glad that issue was fixed with the styles in Generations. Let's talk about classic Sonic's gameplay, and well, most of us probably know by now that this isn't exactly how things were in the OG games. Those games followed the idea of using speed as a reward, and you had to use the environment around you to build up momentum. In Sonic Generations, however, all you have to do is hold down the square button and boom, speed is achieved. Yep, classic Sonic Spin Dash is so damn overpowered in Generations, and you know what? I'm not opposed to that. It is an absolute blast charging up the Spin Dash and blasting over everything. Classic Sonic's overall controls are nice too. Platforming is very simple and intuitive, however, I do wish that his physics were a little more momentum based. Rolling down hills and whatnot will not get you the same speed as it once did, and that may be a turnoff for a lot of people because momentum was one of the things that defined the classic Sonic games. However, even though, yes, Generations' classic Sonic gameplay plays nothing like the old games, on its own, it's a load of fun to mess around with. The speedrunning potential alone makes it a blast to master, but the highlight of the game, for me at least, is modern Sonic's gameplay. I just want to preface this by stating that I am a big fan of the boost games. Rush, Colors, Unleashed, Not Forces, and of course Generations are some of my favorite games in the series, because because I love the boost gameplay. Colors didn't utilize it as much because that game was more platformy, while Unleashed utilized it all the flipping time and it was a blast. But what Generations does with the boost formula is provide a mix of the design philosophy of Colors and Unleashed. You won't be boosting all the time in this game, but you also won't rarely use it. Unleashed also had a problem with stiff movement when playing as Sonic, which made platforming a headache. But thankfully, modern Sonic's controls in Generations are much more snappy and smooth, which makes platforming fun. Top it off with the fact that Generations gives you a more forgiving air dash that won't send you flying off the stage, and yeah, platforming is great. But it's also really fun to just boost through all of the enemies in front of you, and that's what makes modern Sonic's gameplay in Generations some of the best in the series. Now, the level design is a whole other beast. Let's start with the classic stuff. When it comes to classic Sonic level design, I think it's almost crucial to have a faster path on the top of the level with a slower path on the bottom, and thankfully, Generations does that quite well. There are several paths in the classic Sonic levels, with some taking effort to get to, while others not so much. It's also interesting to see how they incorporated classic Sonic into the more modern levels with the stage-specific gimmicks those levels present. You wouldn't initially think that classic Sonic would fit in City Escape, but with the skateboard mechanic, it's pretty fun. If I had one complaint about the level design, it would be that there aren't many moments where you can build up speed to get to higher pathways. Instead, to get to those pathways, you just have to like jump on an enemy at the right time or something similar. Gaining speed isn't rewarded at all, which may be a good thing because again, speed is very easy to achieve with the spin dash. But yeah, overall, the classic levels are very well designed, and thankfully, I can say the same about the modern levels. If you ask me, this is some of the best level design in the entire series. Multiple alternate paths which lead to different collectibles, fun platforming that leads to exhilarating boost sections, and engaging stage gimmicks and set pieces that enhance the immersion. It checks all of the boxes for what makes a good 3D Sonic level if you ask me. My only complaint is that these levels have too many 2D sections for my liking. Now, normally 2D sections are fine, don't get me wrong, but we already have classic Sonic for the 2D stuff. Why does modern Sonic need to have 2D as well? Thankfully, it's still really fun blasting through these levels, and it makes it so you have to replay them and explore different pathways to improve your personal best time. And that's what a good Sonic level should do. Unfortunately, that whole speedrunning aspect and, well, getting good at the game isn't really encouraged at all in Generations, because the ranking system is whack. Even if you die multiple times in a run, you'll still likely get an S rank. So what's the point of having a ranking system? This is a whole other can of worms I want to open in another video, but I think a good Sonic ranking system mixes in elements of score and time, meaning that you need a combination of a good score and a good time to get an S rank. Now, in Generations, the ranking system is almost entirely score-based, which isn't a bad thing in concept, but the score requirements to get an S rank are just too forgiving, man. I highly doubt this is something Shadow Generations will fix, because looking at the footage we have, it seems that people are still getting S ranks pretty easily, but man, it still sucks. The zone selection in this game is really good though, if you ask me. It's really fun running through levels from previous Sonic games and seeing them sort of reimagined. The zones in this game are split into 3 eras, those being the classic era, the adventure era, and the modern era. For the classic era, we have Green Hill from Sonic 1, Chemical Plant from Sonic 2, and Sky Sanctuary from Sonic 3 and Knuckles. All fairly safe picks if you ask me. These zones are simply iconic. They should stop bringing them back though, I'm tired of looking at them. If you ask me, Sky Sanctuary in particular looks stunning. This might be the best looking stage in the entire game for me. Then we have Speed Highway from SA1, City Escape from SA2, and Seaside Hill from Sonic Heroes. Speed Highway and City Escape are an absolute blast to run through and do a really good job of keeping the source material intact. Seaside Hill though, the modern stage at least, is insanely open. There are several alternate paths to take in this level, and it's a load of fun. And finally, we have Crisis City from Sonic 06, Rooftop Run from Sonic Unleashed, and Planet Wisp from Sonic Colors. I do like Crisis City, and I think it's a very underrated level, but Rooftop Run is probably my favorite level in the game. It's just so lively if I could put it into words, and it's an absolute blast to run through. Planet Wisp sucks though, like it's just so damn slow and the wisps just make it worse. Overall though, pretty solid stage selection. There are a couple of stinkers in there, but you know, no game is perfect, so I can let it slide. Now, let's talk about the bosses, and there are 2 types in this game. For each era, there's a rival fight and a main boss fight, which are all from past Sonic games as well. First up, let's talk about the rival fights. The Metal Sonic fight is a classic, there's no denying that. But when replaying it for this video, I realized that it was super easy. I mean, granted, it is the first boss, but still. I mean, hey, at least it's better than the glorified race we got in Sonic CD. Then we have the Shadow fight, which is inspired from from the second Sonic and Shadow fight in SA2. This one has always been interesting to me because instead of dealing damage immediately, you have to collect 2 of these pink orb things before Shadow does in order to power up. And when you do power up, you kill him instantly pretty much, so this boss fight is over fairly quickly. I do believe the best rival fight is the Silver fight, because while it is on rails, it requires a lot of precision. You have to homing attack these floating cars and obstacles at just the right time to get to Silver, and that's not even mentioning the giant boulder at the end. It's just a very solid fight all around. But yeah, overall, the rival fights are great. I'm glad they decided to make the Chaos Emeralds obtainable through these instead of a special stage or something. But then we have the main boss fights, which are found through these gates at the end of each era in the hub world. These are the more fleshed out boss fights, and while they're all pretty easy, they're really fun. The Death Egg Robot was nothing special. It started similarly to the original fight, as you had to hit it when its point was exposed, but the second part of the fight has you luring him to punch these bombs, which you can then roll on his arm to deal damage. It's a very interesting reimagining of the fight, and I'm all here for it. Then we have Perfect Chaos, and oh man, this one is awesome. This is mainly just a bunch of obstacle courses you have to traverse while dodging Chaos's attacks, but it's still really exhilarating, and honestly, I kind of like this better than the final boss in SA1. Then we have the Egg Dragoon from Sonic Unleashed, and it's very different from how it was in that game, because, well, you're not the werehog this time. Instead, you chase it down this long-ass hallway and deal damage when you get close. It isn't anything crazy, but any Unleashed representation is welcome in my eyes. But to unlock these boss fights, you have to complete these challenge gates that show up around the hub world, and once you complete one from each level, you get the keys to unlock the boss gate. Now, if you just make a beeline to the end of the story, doing the bare minimum, then you can probably beat this game in under 2 hours. However, for those who want the extra content, the challenge gates are pretty cool. There's a ton of stuff going on in these. Races against other characters, companion missions where you have to utilize other characters' abilities, time attacks, item challenges, stealth challenges. A lot is going on here. Now, at the end of the day, these are pretty much just filler, and I'm not going to deny the fact that I really don't like playing through these, but the option for extra content is nice. And hey, beating challenges grants you music from past Sonic games to play in the levels, and artwork you can view in the museum. So even if you don't like doing the challenges, the rewards might be worth it if you like getting all of the collectibles. And speaking of music, Generations has a fantastic soundtrack, and that's probably a surprise to absolutely nobody. Yes, the majority of the soundtrack is just comprised of remixes, but these remixes are really damn good, man. They almost feel like completely new tracks with how much they change from the original songs. My personal favorite remix has to be the Crisis City Act 2 one. I flippin' love how they took the melody and instrumentation of Crisis City and added more DMB elements to it. This is 100% one of my favorite renditions of this song. But literally, all of the other tracks, with a few exceptions, are really good too, so I highly recommend checking out this soundtrack if you get a chance. Now, going back to the hub world, there's one more thing I want to talk about, and that is the skill shop. By building up points, you can buy skills and apply them to Sonic. This gives you things like more speed and more boost, it can give classic Sonic a homing attack, and much more. You know, this is fine, but I think it's a bit unnecessary. Both Sonics are already really overpowered in their base forms, so I never found myself using these skills. I mean, hey, you unlock Super Sonic after defeating the final boss, so that's cool. Oh yeah, the final boss. Oh man, yeah, this one kinda sucks. You just kinda hold forward, and that's about it, really. The characters also don't shut up at all during this fight. Like, I know there's a homing shot, I can see it. But yeah, this is the only bad boss in the game in my opinion. But for the final boss, it definitely could use some work. But that's pretty much everything for Sonic Generations. If you ask me, this was probably one of the most impactful Sonic games of all time. The fact that this game was good gave people hope for the future of the series, even if that future seemed dark at times. And let's not forget the impact the game had on the community too. There are countless mods for this game you can try out, from stages to characters to pretty much anything else. The modding scene for Generations is outstanding, and even after all of that, this is still a very nice celebration of Sonic's past. So with all of that in mind, I'm giving Sonic Generations a solid 8 out of 10. It's just a good game all around, even though it's a little too short for my liking. But hey, we're getting more Generations content later this year with Shadow Generations, and I cannot be more excited. And you bet I'm going to make a video on that the second it comes out. And hey, if you want a chance to win a copy of that game, then join the SF Citadel Discord server where I'm currently hosting a giveaway. I'll leave a link in the description if you're interested. And one more thing, me and a couple of my friends just started our very own podcast, so I'll leave a link in the description down below if you want to check that out. But for now, that's all for me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all later. Goodbye.